Welcome everyone to Early Adopters Reveal the Power of the eForms Assistant. I will be one of your guides today. My name is Lauren Escobar. I am a solution architect here at Gideon Taylor. You will also be hearing from Alicia in just a moment, and then we will introduce our panelists. Alicia, are you able to advance the slide? Perfect. So right off the bat, we're going to get started with a quick demo of eForms Assistant, just so everyone is on the same page. Some of you may have seen it already, some of you may be using it already, but some of you may be brand new to it. So we're going to just do a real quick demo. Then we'll meet our panelists, have our panel discussion and our Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up. So Alicia, would you like to say hello and get started with the demo?
Yes. Hey, everybody. I'm Alicia Malcarne. I'm a manager of our business analysis and customer training. And as Lauren mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and start us with a demo and a quick introduction to eForms Assistant. So eForms Assistant is AI-powered guidance for form builders and for users. It's built within GT eForms, provides that AI assistance 24/7, helps builders. So I mentioned kind of two approaches. It helps builders when you're configuring forms, and it can also then guide your end users as they're completing forms within GT eForms. It is included now free with your 3.7.0 framework, with our recently released 3.7.0 framework. So if ever there is more motivation to upgrade a framework, this is another great one, so that you can get access to this AI assistant. So we're going to jump in to just a quick demo of what that looks like. So here on my screen, if I can get this to play. This is the GT eForms homepage within PeopleSoft. As you can see, lots of forms here. So I can actually use my eForms assistant down there in the right-hand corner to ask it a question to help drive me to the form that I need to fill out. In this case, I need to do a temporary hire. What form should I use for that? Comes back and says, you want to use the hire form, and even includes a link there to take me directly to the form to start a hire form. On the page, you'll notice down in the right-hand corner, we've got the eForm assistant available to us as well. Popped some information in for us. And as I'm filling out the form, I come to the pay group, and I'm not really sure as an end user what pay group I should be using for this employee. So I can go back to my eForms assistant and now ask it a question about what pay group I should be using for this temporary employee. And you'll see then I get some responses about what the options, what those mean, and then some recommendations that temporary employees are most commonly weekly or hourly. So some good information that helps that form user to be able to fill out the form, ask questions of the AI assistants, get responses to some of those particularly difficult or hard questions or fields that I might have on the form. So let's now flip into our form setup. This is where most of our form development happens, the vast majority of it. So those of you that are familiar with eForms will be familiar with our form setup. So you can see, I'm just going to do a quick show of what happens when to enable eForms Assistant. In 3.7.0, there'll be a new tab. You'll click Enable eForms Assistant, and then that little description at the top provides that guidance for how to pick your form. So when I asked it about what form should I use, it's using that information. Below that then are a number of frequently asked questions, FAQs, that I can pop into this configuration to help guide AI in responding to questions from my end users. So you'll see here I'm highlighting that we have a question in here about pay group. We've anticipated that there might be questions about pay group, and so I'm able to put that question in and then provide an answer to what is a pay group, what do those different options mean. So you can see we have a number of them for this particular form. I do want to pause here at the bottom. You'll see that there is an add link URL at the bottom. That is generated automatically And that is what connects to, if you recall, when I asked it which form should I use, it gave me the link to start the hire form. And that link there is generating that link that then displayed to me as I was asking the eForm assistant. So it gives you a little highlight introduction into what the form configurators do to set up eForms Assistant. This is by no means comprehensive, but gives you a nice insight into what is involved with that setup. It's very simple and straightforward. So I'm going to continue to the other aspect of what eForms Assistant does. In addition to helping our form users as they're completing the form, it also helps our form configurators or our form business analysts that may be developing forms. It helps to provide guidance on your form development. So we're going to watch quick as we ask our eForms assistant to answer a question for us. In this case, I want my form to require comments if a form has been recycled back to an initiator and now they're updating the form. I want to require that they include some comments. So I can pop my question here into the eForms assistant. It recognizes that now I'm in form setup. I'm asking form setup questions. I'm asking about how do I configure this. And so it gives me a lovely response here about the steps to make that required. Make sure I'm in the form setup. I'm going to go to the Pages tab, to the Update task. You're going to go down and find the Comments segment and configure a visual if, etc. So it gives you instructions on how I, as a form configurator, can then accomplish the tasks that I'm specifically questioning or asking about in my form development. So again, works for form end users, somebody completing my form, as well as form configurators who are building these forms. So I'm going to show demo here. I can also ask it, let's say I need to write now some logic to only have it show to recycled forms, but I don't remember what the form status is for a recycled form. So I can ask eForms assistant, hey, what is the code for a recycled form? And it provides back to me that is equivalent to an R. And so I can then go and write my logic. We'll demonstrate it here. Write my logic as an eForms developer or creator. And I can say, hey, form status is equal to R. So it's a great tool to, again, help our end users, those that are using forms, as well as then our form developers, our form creators, as they are working through some of their complex needs or as you have questions. And I didn't mention this as it was going through, but in that video, I pointed out here, I can back this up just a second. We also got responses back from our eForm assistant with links to documentation that if you click on that link, that then takes you to our documentation site where you can get more information specific to that topic that you were that we were asking the assistant about. All right, so that gives us a little groundwork, or at least sets the groundwork for us so we have an idea of what the eForms assistant looks like within the GT eForms product and to end users. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time back over to Lauren now to introduce our panelists and to share a little bit about them.
Thanks, Alicia. So first, I just want to start by saying that we have a variety of clients who have jumped feet first into eForms Assistant. So this is our little shout out to our eForms Assistant pioneers. 3 of these institutions have joined us today to participate in this panel. So I'd like to start by introducing Darcy Swope from Grand Rapids Community College. She is an IT enterprise analyst programmer there, and they are currently using eForms Assistant only in their test and development environment, hoping for a launch into production in mid-September. And Darcy can update us on that if anything has changed, but they use eForms in both their campus and their HR environments. And between those 2 environments, they have about 20 form types. Darcy, do you want to give a little wave and say hi?
Hello.
There's Darcy. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have Sarah Narvison, who is with North Dakota University Systems. She's an application analyst with them. At North Dakota University Systems, they use eForms with both campus and HCM, but have quite a lot on the campus side. They have about 200 form types between the two pillars, with the majority of those being on the campus side. And they are already in production with 3 forms on eForms Assistant. The North Dakota University System is an interesting use case because they have 11 separate institutions that they are responsible for. So, Sarah, would you like to say hello and give a little wave?
Hi.
Thanks, Sarah. And last but not least, we have 2 panelists representing Western University in Canada. We have Ab Birch, who is a director in their financial information systems, and Soed Shanta, who is a programmer analyst. They are representing both HCM and finance for us. And as I understand it, just went to production, maybe within this last week, with their first eForms Assistant enabled form. They also have plans to implement the full IDA conversational tool. So we can hear some more about that later. And they have about 30 form types. Soed, do you want to wave and say hi?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. So I am going to turn it back over to Alicia, who is going to be moderating the panel discussion. As I mentioned at the top of the presentation, we will have Q&A after the panel discussion. So if you could throw any questions that you have into the chat or the Q&A module, if they are for a specific panelist, just indicate that. If not, you can just say it's a general question. And I don't know if I said this at the top, so I will just remind everyone that there is a recording of the Lunch and Learn that you will receive a link to after the conclusion of the Lunch and Learn today. So Alicia, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. And a big thank you to our panelists for joining us today. These individuals, these organizations are early adopters, as Lauren mentioned. They jumped on board when we were asking for beta clients to help us with this eForms Assistant launch. And we're so grateful to them to also partner with us in that, but also then to come back and share their wisdom, their knowledge, their experience in this Lunch and Learn. We hope those of you that are eForms eForms clients, you currently are using our product, that you'll learn from their experience and be encouraged to implement 3.7.0 and take advantage of this really fantastic new feature. And those of you that are not current eForms clients to see the types of things we're doing, incorporating AI into our product and into the experience that our clients are using with their organizations. So let me start with a very, hopefully, easy question here with our panelists. And we'll start, maybe let's go this order. Sarah, Darcy, and then Ab or Shoad, you can respond to this. What was it that initially drew you to becoming a beta client with this eForms Assistant tool?
We first kind of heard it. That it was in kind of beta testing. We realized like this is something that we could truly utilize. We have a lot of forms, a lot of student-facing forms, and we thought this would be a really good chance to jump on it, kind of do a slow integration with our campuses and kind of get the word out. And it's been an adventure, but yeah, what drew us really was the ability that students now can ask questions regarding the form instead of reaching out to the institutional office to ask the same question. So it'll kind of twofold pretty much help everybody.
Oh, Darcy, you're muted.
How about that?
There we go.
Okay. I got excited. I had been playing with a couple of chat AI programs and was extremely excited to see how well it would take one of my very poorly worded questions, actually figure it out and give me an answer. So when I heard that Gideon Taylor Forms was going to be bringing in a chat bot, I got to thinking about all the forms where no matter how much detail we would put on a form, we still get calls from students and staff on various questions and get them answered. And when I realized that if we had the AI involved, the AI could answer a bunch of those questions. So that's why I jumped on it right away and got excited about it.
That's great. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not sure who wants to take that one.
I'm happy to speak, and Soad can correct me if I tell any lies. But so I would say our experience is probably similar to the other two panelists, where we first heard about the eForms assistant back in March when we were at the Alliance conference, and we had been at a workshop on the configurable component interface for eForms. And we had just come off of another beta partnership with Gideon Taylor for insights dashboards, and had a great experience with that. And so we were excited when we heard about the eForms assistant, and we said, like, this is something we would love to have immediately. And we expressed an interest in being an early adopter, and got the invitation from GT to participate. So yeah, we saw the potential for it. We have a lot of student-facing forms as well, and you can never put enough information on a form to answer every question, and it just becomes messy and it complicates the form and makes it too long. So to have the eForms assistant there as a prompt is a great tool for us.
Yeah, and we will dive into, I appreciate the theme I'm getting from these, and I think we'll dive into this a little bit in just a question or two, but the ability to to put in front of students a little more forward-thinking type of tool, and then also that having to reduce some of that instructional text or things that we might have on forms that often people may or may not read or view. Let's before we get into some of the benefits, I do want to ask about your experience implementing it. So now you all did not, at that time, it was not part of our framework, so it was a little bit different in terms of the installation, but more specifically, once everything was installed and ready to go, can you talk about your experience with getting this set up and utilizing it? Was it easier, harder than you expected? What was your experience?
This actually was a really seamless experience. I mean, just at the infancy, like the actual setup, it roughly took 2 hours to put it in our dev environment. And we pretty much just ran with it. Our programmer was absolutely fantastic at getting all the little kinks worked out. And we just kind of went through and we just picked a couple of forms at random that we had and just tried it for ourselves before we reached out to the institution. You know, we decided to pick 3 institutions to see if they would be interested in doing it as our beta version of it, and they quickly jumped on board, and it was just it was so fast. And then when we moved it up between dev test stage and our prod environment, it worked like a dream. Like we had 0 issues, and it was really fast.
Sarah, let me ask quick before we move to Darcy. What was there something specific about those 3 institutions that made you choose them to be your beta clients?
So we wanted to pick like a small, medium, large institution. We picked one of our biggest institutions because they had roughly the most forms, and there is a form. We have a registration action form for this institution, and they always get questions, and I figured this would be perfect for them. We picked a medium-sized school that we knew that in other testing that they were really great to work with. They knew they would have like questions on forms. And then with our smaller institution, they were a little reluctant at first, but once we kind of showed them, we demoed it for them, they were like, oh, this will be great for X form, and they got on board with it really quickly.
That's great. Darcy. I think you're muted again, Darcy. I think it doesn't let me unmute.
Sorry about that. Our system admin did the actual installation of the product, and I didn't get involved until after that was done. But from what I heard, it was fairly easy. Getting the forms set up, it was exciting to see how easy it was to do. into putting in the questions and the possible answers. And I was pleased that the eForms assistant not only took my short answers, but turned them into nice instructive paragraphs when it would respond to the student. I worked on 2 different forms. One was a form that was originally a student or a staff form that they would walk a student through filling out. They'd ask the questions and the student would would give them the answers, and then they would put that into the form. Converting that over to a student form, the questions don't always make sense because it's shorthand for the staff member, but the student doesn't necessarily understand the questions. So it was really nice to work with the department and with the eForms assistant to help develop those questions so a student could answer them with additional information.
Thank you, Ab.
So from an implementation perspective, I think I'll let Soed just maybe speak to her experience as a developer.
Okay. Yeah, so it's very similar to what Sarah mentioned. It was very easy installation, about 2-hour meeting. We had GT Assistant to do that. We just basically, because we were in 3.358, so we had to install projects and then do the setup, and it was very simple and easy. And then after that, Ab and Jessica from the functional team took it over and started adding the questions. And we had some bolt-on, which is augmented routing, so we had to do that kind of integration manually into the code. But other than that, it was very simple installation.
And for me too, I think it was surprising that we didn't have to do any firewall changes. It was very simple because the communication is using HTTPS on port 443. So like that's pretty standard and default for most institutions, most environments for PeopleSoft. So that was very simple for us. There were no hiccups at all in turning it on.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that too. I know that may be a question that would come up from those that haven't used it yet. I want to dig a little bit into how you crafted your FAQs. So FAQs, as I showed in the demonstration, are those questions and then answers that feed into the eForms assistant to help it then respond to those user questions. Darcy, I want to start with you because when we met with you before, you had a creative way of approaching building out those FAQs. Do you want to share?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I had been playing with some chat AI programs and was excited to see how well they could take my questions and turn them into really decent questions. So I used primarily ChatGPT, and I told it that I was creating data for an AI program to help answer questions for students. You know, I gave it some background so it would help. It would understand it was coming from a student perspective. And then I would ask it like a question that we had on the form that we would ask the student, like the question was minimum grade question. I had no idea what that meant. So I put that into ChatGPT and it came back, you know, some programs require a C, some require a B minus. And it actually put together, once I explained it to it that I was populating an AI application to answer questions for our forms, it came up with probably 5 or 6 basic answers and a variety of different questions that a student could ask. And I just copied and pasted that into the GT eForm assistant. And then I went out and tested it. And like I said, I was very surprised at how detailed and how well the answers came back and the questions that it created for me. So yeah, I depended a lot on that program to help me craft not only the questions that a student might ask, but the answers to respond to as well.
Yeah, that's great. I thought that was a fun thing to use AI to help train AI, right? It's a very interesting and fun approach to that. Sarah or Ab, any other suggestions or tips and tricks you have that you used as you were building out those FAQs?
So we actually took a different approach. Once the form is in production, the department is technically the form owner unless they need to make modifications. They reach out to us. So we kind of put the ownership on them, and we had them come up with the most questions that they receive the phone calls on, since we're more of the back end facing, so we don't get the day-to-day calls. And they developed the questions that they usually receive. They kind of did some chats within the office, and then they provided me the questions, and it was so easy just to like plop them in, and it's the eForms assistant would come out with this beautiful, eloquent answer, better than anything that I could put together. So we kind of we give the departments ownership on what type of questions that they want to ask, and then we put those in.
So for us, I would say, Darcy, great minds think alike, because we also use ChatGPT to take some of our form FAQs and distill from the FAQ a series of questions and answers that then we could populate into the form FAQ section. So that worked out well. We also had subject matter experts for the various forms, similar to Sarah, where we have security access request forms, we have accounts receivable forms, we have student-facing expense forms. And so we asked those areas to provide the questions and answers that they were most often faced with. And we also checked with our help desk to get the kinds of questions that they're used to dealing with. So it was it was a combination of approaches, both distilling good questions using ChatGPT, but also seeking questions from the various functional areas where the forms were supporting them.
Those are really great suggestions, particularly, using that resource of either help centers or help desks that are regularly getting questions, or departments that own a form and are regularly getting questions to grab from that. And hopefully with the benefit of them, maybe they get fewer phone calls or fewer questions directed to them. Before we jump into a little bit more about the impact that you're seeing and your user experience, I do want to ask now, Sarah and Ab and Soad, you're in production. Maybe share with the group any hurdles or anything that you encountered in getting this eForms assistant to production.
Actually, we really didn't have any hurdles. It was completely seamless. We gave the departments kind of their own time on, getting it up. We usually give them a 2-week testing window to make sure. But once I imported the form, it was up and running. The only thing I actually have to remember is when we do a refresh of our lower environment to reactivate the key. Because we recently did a refresh of our stage environment. I was like, oh, this isn't working. And then I was like, oh yeah, I have to go activate the key. And then it was fine. But we had no hurdles. I did reach out to the institutions that we have implemented in prod, and they haven't really said anything. So I guess no news is good news. But I mean, I believe that students are using it to when they have questions on the form.
Yeah, and we can confirm, we do get a little bit of data from our IDA team that they are using it. There have been conversations happening between students in the NDUS sphere and with our console, our IDA console.
So for our production experience, we haven't been live that long, so we don't have a lot of direct feedback. So we haven't had any feedback to our help desk, which I guess is good. But the process of going live was very simple. I would say for us, the biggest challenge was deciding how much to go live with. Initially, we wanted to have it on every form. And so we were busy populating all of our FAQs and trying to get some standardization between all of those forms for things like, what is this form used for? Who should I contact if I don't know, or if I don't get the right answer? And so we wanted to have like those questions and answers on every single form. But in the end, we found that it was just too much to bite off. So we ended up just going live with a single form to start with, and we're now adding form by form. But the process of turning it on in production was very simple. The other question we had to ask ourselves was, do we just want to have this available at the form level, or do we want to have it on a forms homepage or a landing page? So for now, we're just enabling it at the form level because we don't have it on all forms and we don't want to cause confusion by putting it at the form homepage when it's not applicable to every form. So most of the delay in getting it into production was just on our side trying to figure out how we wanted to deploy it.
Great, thanks for sharing that experience. I hope that's helpful to see, and I'm really happy to hear that that was a pretty smooth and seamless process for you. Sarah, I want to go to something. We're going to move into a little bit more into the user impact, which I know is a little hard to know, directly when we don't, you haven't heard feedback or you're not getting specific answers or questions coming to you. But I did want to have you talk a little bit, Sarah. You mentioned when we had talked, we spoke before this session just about some of your experiences, and you had mentioned your surprise at the language capabilities. Do you want to share that experience?
Yeah, and it was funny because, we kind of learned it from a previous lunch and learn, but it was so nice that I was like, I'm curious, I'm going to plop something in German and see how it responds. And I had asked the question in German and it responded back, and it was so seamless. And then I went right back to English, and it just, without like dropping a beat, it picked up like pretty much where I left off. It was really neat. So when I am chatting with departments that are thinking about implementing it, I throw that out there. I was like, it can do multiple languages and it is super efficient. So it's been neat to be able to kind of play with that tool. And on the selfish side, like, I really truly appreciate it on the developer side to ask the chatbot a question at random, like, I forgot how to do this. And then it's just like, here you go.
And that's excellent segue into my next question was going to be if you have used it as an eForm creator, if you've been able to use it in that capacity.
I have quite a few times because I'm like, I cannot, if there's a certain way to tweak a visual if, I'm like, how do I do this? And I actually had our programmer send me a message one day. She's like, do you remember how to do this? And I immediately went into the eForm assistant. I said, here you go. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's right. She can go into the assistant herself and use it if needed. It was so dang slick. And I was like, oh my gosh. Then it takes the time away trying, going out to the documentation website and try to scroll through to try and remember, okay, where did I find this last time? It was just right at my fingertips and I got the answer immediately.
Love it. Yeah, that's great. Darcy or Ab or Soad, anything to share regarding that aspect as a form creator?
I don't think we've used it too much as a form creator yet, mostly because we've just been more focused on getting the eForms assistant out, so attaching it to each form. So we haven't had to build any new forms in the past couple of months, but we have used it for a couple of questions. So Jessica is primarily our forms builder, and I would say she's got a lot of knowledge, and probably if I have any questions, I just go to her. But she was away a couple weeks ago on vacation, and someone asked me, how do I send this form back for a revision, or how do I use the admin tool? And I had no idea. But I went into the form setup and asked the question, and it gave me exactly the answer I needed. It took me right to the resource. And so I was pleasantly surprised at how quickly it was able to just answer my question. And I didn't have to go to Jessica and then confess to not knowing what I'm doing.
Well, Jessica is certainly irreplaceable, but that's great that we had a nice substitute while she was out. That's awesome.
Yeah, to add to that, yeah, Jessica is the functional expert, and I know she mentioned that she found it useful that like the documentation is right there. You can just click on a link, and if you forgot how to configure something, it just, as Sarah said, it's just right there. So yeah, it is useful in the functional side.
And I haven't used it very much. I asked a couple of questions near the beginning once I realized that it was there. But I haven't had a chance to really get in there and see how detailed it gets. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, excellent. So let's shift a little bit now to what specific problems or challenges in your organization do you foresee eForms Assistant helping you to solve in your day-to-day?
I mean, really, I feel like it's going to cut down on a lot of the time that the institutions will have spending the time on the phone, helping a student. It's going to give, more ownership for the student, to be able to troubleshoot that problem so they're not, on hold or having to do a callback or anything like that. I really find that it'll cut down a lot of time for both the student and the institution.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have a whole department that is set up to answer student questions. And once we get this into our production environment, I can see it reducing a lot of those phone calls, a lot of specific questions on can I pay by check? Can I pay by credit card? Just some of the various questions that would be asked. It's also going to reduce a lot of the verbiage that we have to put on forms to make sure that we can answer the different variety of student questions that they have. If you put too much verbiage on a form, it can make it look intimidating, and nobody really wants to read through a whole bunch of text just to find the one question that they need to answer. So I see this helping making the forms less intimidating. In addition, if I have to go to a FAQ to search for an answer, a lot of times they're not really searchable. You have to know the exact question to ask in order to find the right answer on an FAQ. Whereas the eForm assistant, I can just type it in. It does the searching through all the FAQs for me that we provided, and it's a much simpler. I think students are going to feel more empowered. Like she said, they own the process now. They can answer their questions. They don't have to wait between 8 and 5 where they can call and ask a question because they can get their answers right there.
Because we know they're doing it at midnight anyway, so right, we can we can get the answer in the time frame they want it. I love that you shared that about FAQs. We can, spend hours developing FAQs, and it's not always going to be the exact way that somebody might ask a question. And so the ability for that eForm assistant for individuals to ask in the manner in which they are comfortable asking that, and the eForm assistant to then be able to interpret that. That's a really excellent point, Darcy.
So for us, we're not student and we're not HR. We're actually financials, FSCM. So for us, our population is more administrators and AOs, people that need to know how to do things. And so for us, we're really hoping to cut down on our support help desk questions as well for end users that are being onboarded. They're new to their position and they don't know, how do I get GL inquiry access? How do I delegate my research authority? How do I create an expense form? How do I approve a procurement requisition? And so a lot of this documentation is inside of various request forms that they need to be able to do their job or complete their function. We do have student-facing forms because we provide the ability for students to create expense claims. So both graduate students and undergrad students, we also have medical residents. And so for those populations, the forms hopefully will really cut down on their need to contact us. And they tend to have different hours than administrators. And so they're on the system, at all hours of the night. Quite often when there's nobody there to answer the call. So hopefully it'll cut down on the emails that they're having to send and improve the user experience for them. So that's our primary goals.
Yeah, that's excellent. I appreciate you sharing that. So we got a couple minutes here and then we will turn over for Q&A. Let's chat about your future plans. I want to start with you, Ab and Soad. Western has chosen to license the full IDA product. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you all as to what led you to that decision and share a little bit about what your future plans are.
Sure. So we saw IDA a year and a half ago at the Alliance conference. Where was it? Phoenix? Might have been Phoenix. Anyways, we were really excited about having an enterprise-wide AI chatbot. We don't have a chatbot anywhere in at Western yet. And when we saw the power of IDA, and we've really seen it, expand over the past 18 months, we approached our senior administration with a proposal to pilot an enterprise AI inside of PeopleSoft as a proof of concept, essentially. And so we were funded for that, and we've been moving forward with implementing that inside of PeopleSoft Financials with the hope of expanding it to our other PeopleSoft pillars, HR and student, so that it can provide any question related to a PeopleSoft environment. So for us, we were already headed down the IDA enterprise path before we even heard about the eForms assistant. So when we got wind of the eForms assistant, we thought this is a perfect segue to get our feet wet with IDA, knowing that full IDA is coming. This will be great for our user community to be able to see it, to recognize it, so that when we do roll out the full version of IDA across the enterprise, it should be potentially an easier adoption for them as well. They'll already have seen it from the eForms assistant. So so that's where we are today with the IDA enterprise rollout. We've just started our implementation and hope to be done by the end of the year.
Yeah, we're very excited to see how that works out for your institution, and to see you go live with that. Sarah, Darcy, anything you would or how would you say what the future looks like for you and your institution and eForms Assistant?
Now that we're fully live, I sent out a message to all the form owners indicating, hey, this is a product that exists. I'm happy to demo it. And departments have been reaching out, and I've been able to provide them information. I think this is a good starter to potentially look at the capabilities of the full IDA client and see what kind of use that would be for us in the future. And I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping, now that more institutions are kind of learning about it, that they'll get on board. We are still in the process of converting our forms over to Helium. So we have about 87 currently in Helium. So not all the forms that some of the institutions want have been converted over. So once they do, we'll be able to implement it for them.
Yeah, with 200, I can imagine that's
We are halfway. We are officially halfway with the conversion.
You're doing great.
Yeah, we're going to be starting with just the basic version, the one that is licensed with GT eForms. And then I'm hoping that as we go down the road and show its potential, that we'll move to one of the more formal versions.
So let's wrap up with a question. If you could give advice to an organization considering eForms Assistant, what advice would you give them?
And go. Like, really, just if you're even considering thinking about it, with the free tool, just do it. It will be such a benefit once you get it rolling. Even if you may not have a lot of forms that, would be applicable to use it on, the end user side, using it alone on the developer side is fantastic to have.
Yeah, I agree. If you are an eForms user today, you should implement eForms Assistant ASAP, even if it's just one form. It's very easy to implement. Probably the one advice I would give you is make sure you have your form FAQs thought out. And it's not hard to do that. You can use ChatGPT to help you create those. But that's going to make your assistant that much more powerful. To have as many FAQs, questions and answers that you can think of to help your users get assistance when they're filling out their forms. But if you're a forms user, yeah, I would say there's no reason why you shouldn't implement eForms Assistant right away.
And I can't add any more to that. That's all great advice. Just jump in and use it, especially the free version. It's free. Get in there and play with it.
Excellent. Thank you all. Really appreciate your comments and your the information that you've shared and the insights that you've shared. I hope others that may be considering this or eForms, specifically eForms current clients, that, as you said, it's easy to implement and a great way to just dive in a very easily accessible way. I'm going to turn the time over to Lauren. She has been looking at questions that may have come in our chat, so I'm going to let her lead our Q&A for a minute.
It actually looks like you guys did such a great job of covering your content that we don't have any questions, at least right now. So we could ask another question of the panel, or we could go right into our wrap up.
Let me ask, I had some other things that we didn't specifically talk about, but maybe, let's see. Oh yeah, I was gonna maybe bring up, so your institution's a little, Abin Sawad, Western's a little unique in that you have a chief AI officer, and I understand you were able to share with the eForms assistant to demo that, or at least share with him a little bit about the product. Can you maybe share with us if there was any thoughts, feedback, comments that he had as he was looking at it in that role as your chief AI officer?
Sure, I can share some feedback. So yes, Western does have an associate vice president of AI, I think is his title. So he is a researcher whose area of focus is artificial intelligence, and so he's somewhat of a executive advisor to the president on AI at Western. So when we showed him the eForms assistant in the context of the PeopleSoft environment, he was actually very complimentary of what it could do and what the potential was for Western. And he had some, words of advice. He was very concerned about security, very concerned about data in the cloud, wanted to know, exactly what the integration looked like. So he had some technical questions. And his advice was, you guys are the first, don't screw it up. So, sage words of wisdom from your associate vice president. But it was very positive. So, he sees AI in a very positive light. I think AI does instill fear sometimes with people about what it can do and what it can unleash. But the eForms assistant environment is very controlled, very constrained. It has great guide rails to it, and so there's very little. I'm saying this, hopefully there's very little to fear with eForms assistant in adding it to your eForms capabilities. So he was curious, he was positive, and he was definitely supportive in moving forward with the product.
I'm so glad you asked that question, Alicia, because that was exactly what I was going to ask. And we did end up getting a question through the chat, so I'll pose that to you. This is probably more for you, Alicia, than to the panelists, but if the panelists want to chime in, feel free. How does the assistant behave if they don't have an answer to the question that is asked?
I'm curious if our panelists have experienced that as you were testing and working with it.
We did. We experienced it because I've thrown some weird stuff out there and just asking random questions like not applicable to the form, and it provided, a really eloquent answer because I said, "What is my GPA?" And I mean, of course, it's not going to know that. So it said, I'm unsure, but you should really reach out to the records office or something. Like it really developed a good response that student could use to go and get the help they need from the right department. It doesn't, obviously it doesn't give specifics, but they gave, a good enough answer that student could reach out.
So for us, we asked lots of questions that we knew it didn't have the answer for. We just wanted to see whether it would answer anything. And so one example was I asked a question as a student, basically, how do I know when my student award is going to be released, or when am I going to receive my student award? And we're the financial system and we have nothing to do with student awards. But the AI assistant was able to say, I don't have information about student awards. However, you should contact the registrar's office, the student financial aid office, potentially the advancement office. It gave some like pretty good university related answers to help a student out, even though it said, I don't have the answer, but here's some things you could think about doing. And so nothing to do with the form. We had no FAQs related to that. But it is able to distill really good answers through the large language model access that it has in the back end without deviating outside of your institution's guide rails.
We
That's
found
awesome.
something similar. One of the questions, if we fill out a leave of absence, you have to have insurance on your car and you have to have a certain amount for if there's an accident. And I asked it, how do I know if my insurance has this? And it came back with, look on your insurance policy for these words specifically. And it gave a whole bunch of, it gave me some really concise, detailed questions. And you can call your insurance person and ask them specifically. And it worded the question for me so that I could ask a coherent question of my insurance agent to make sure that I had the right information. So it does pull from outside our FAQs to pull in other information as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
We had another question come in through the chat. In terms of reporting, does it generate reports of user interaction?
and I can take that one. The eForms assistant in the free version that comes with the GT eForms product, it does not include any reporting of those interactions. But if you were to go with any of our IDA or other IDA products, that does include reporting.
Excellent. And here's another one. Can you copy questions and answers from one form to another, or is it all manual?
I looked at that myself. So even though we didn't copy questions from one form to another, we did investigate how difficult that would be. And for us, it would require a developer's help, but I think you could very easily insert rows into that record for the form FAQs. It's a very simple record. So you could, GT can correct me, but like you can certainly insert rows into that record if you had common questions that you wanted to populate for every single form.
I saw Jay.
Copying,
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
copying is not currently a feature built in, but that's a great idea. We'll take it back for evaluation for a future enhancement. But what Ab said is exactly right. It would be pretty easy to do it with a developer with a quick script to put on all your form types. And we'll consider making that functionally available as a future enhancement.
Thanks, Jay. All right. We have just about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any final questions for any of the panelists?
All right, well, I think we can probably wrap up then. Let me get back and share my screen again because I do have a couple of slides that we will walk through for some. So get my slide to advance. There we go. So one of the things that we have heard, the number one reason, and this is the thing we've heard most often when we ask our clients, our current eForms users about implementing and using the eForms assistant, most often we hear back, we don't have time to apply the upgrade. So as a special for the next month, little over a month here for the month of September, if you are finding that this is holding you back, we are going to have some special pricing to help you upgrade your forms to 3.7.0, your framework to 3.7.0. So this is for the month of September only. Discounts if you've got multiple environments, and basically the opportunity is there, and we are giving you a really fantastic rate. If this is what's holding you back, let us help you get to 3.7.0 so that you can utilize this really awesome tool. If you're interested in that upgrade help, that support, you can reach out to John Bonin. You can see his email there. He's from our sales team, and he can help you get engaged quickly so that we can help you get to 3.7.0. Additionally, we have a couple of additional support that we're providing as you're looking to implement eForms Assistant. So the first thing here on the left, we are offering free onboarding sessions. So our beta clients mentioned that they had, a meeting with us where we helped them set that up. We're extending that to all eForms users, eForms Assistant users, that as you are beginning your journey with eForms Assistant, let us help you with this onboarding session. So it'll be a 60-minute session with one of our GT analysts who can help you in getting things set up, making sure you're ready to go, and even get you started on some of your FAQs and that form enablement. So in order to request that, just very easy, email to our support team, and that will start the process to get that onboarding session set up for you. And then in addition to that, we've created some advanced training, and the focus of this training is a little bit different from our onboarding session in that we help you to better craft your FAQs, to know how to best test, some of the best practices from our IDA team around how do we test, how do we ensure we're getting AI to respond in the way that we want it to respond, how do we train our AI, and that advanced training, it's a quick class, 2-hour class. We have our first session of that September 30th. So if you are interested in paying for a seat in that training on September 30th, that will help you really level up with regards to your FAQs and your testing and refining that process as you're implementing eForms Assistant. So we really hope you'll take advantage of all of those opportunities, whether it's us helping you to upgrade your framework, these onboarding sessions, or even going beyond with our training. As far as lunch and learns, so we really appreciate all of you joining us today. We do these lunch and learns every single month with different clients, different products. And the next coming up, we've got a couple that will be focused on the user experience. So in September, we have a session around staying vanilla with your PeopleSoft, but looking modern. So reimagining your PeopleSoft user experience. What more can you do with that? And that will be the focus of September session. We hope you'll join us for that. And then in October, we have a client that's currently working on using our Web UX product, that user experience product, to work with their continuing education enrollment. So it's very simple process from a community member searching for a class, enrolling, and being admitted, all through a click, seamless, smooth process. And we'll be able to showcase that. And we're looking forward to that showcase in October. And then last but not least, just as a reminder, always, we have other training courses that can help you and assist you as you're doing your form development, or if you're interested in things like PeopleSoft Insights, or I specifically want to point out, we do have our week-long extensive eForms, Intro to GT eForms. Anybody that might be new or need a in-depth refresher, that's pay per seat. So we have mixed clients that participate in that. The next offering of that, from the last one for this year, will be October 20th. And pop in if you've got somebody on your team that needs that training, then that's coming up. So with that, then we'll go ahead and wrap up this session. Thank you again, big hearty thank you to our panelists. Really appreciated all of the information that you were able to share with us. Your experiences have been invaluable, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.